Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and thanks for joining me for a Friday live chat. If you want to join the chat, join it on Facebook, join it on McDuff Lives 2 or McDuff Lives 3 on YouTube. And, if you want to chat on Rumble, that would be fine. But most people have found that Rumble is not really up to par yet as far as the chat function is concerned. So I would recommend that, although I really want you to join my Rumble channel, that if you want to join the chat, uh, pick up one of the YouTube channels or the Facebook channel at McDuff Lives, and the chat will just pop right up onto my screen, and I won't have to hunt for it. So anyway, today is Friday, and it's been quite an interesting week for me. The highlight for me was, of course, last night when Marcia, my wife, was able to put together a show for us, basically introducing the idea of nutrition and plant-based diet. And I think it's a very controversial thing, and it took a lot of courage for her to stand up and say, "I'm going to do this." And she spent the afternoon putting her materials together. We worked together with just coming up with some subjects that we wanted to make sure and cover, put some graphics together, and when the time came, we pulled the string and the show went, and I thought it went very, very well. It's interesting how many people are going to have different views from the plant-based diet. There's a lot of diets out there, and a lot of people feel like, well, mine is better. Well, that's okay, and we're not nutritionists, neither she nor I. We don't have any degrees in such thing. It's just that she's been studying it for, oh, it must be going on 20 years, if not more. But her specific studies since my cancer came back have been really intense, and she is working very, very hard to help us understand proper nutrition and how to avoid cancer and how to get rid of it. Well, very interesting reporting this week from a number of people. I really have been listening to George Webb's Spaces, and I find them to be very interesting. I guess it was a week or so ago when he reported that his conclusion is that the weaponization of cancer started uh, before World War II, that it was done by the Nazis in the concentration camps using enslaved, the slave uh, population, that were destined to die anyway, to experiment on how to create these cells that, well, I think most people call them HeLa cells now, the cells that never die. And I think, if you compare the Henrietta Lacks story to the concentration camp story, it's pretty easy for me to say the concentration camp story makes more sense. So I think that's very interesting and worthwhile to follow up on, if because one thing about George is he's going to tell you his conclusion, but as far as doing the digging behind to see how he got there, you kind of have to do that yourself, and that's there's just some work involved in understanding what we're talking about, what George talked about, what Mark Kulak or Dave Underdown or any of the other great commentators. Bill Taylor, you read his D State uh, D State News is what he calls it now, and you get some good writing that explains a little bit of depth to things. But research is something we all have to do for ourselves. If someone else tells you something, well, that's them. That's not you. You haven't internalized that as your own truth. But because these things are so important, it's important that we follow up and we do the dig and see, okay, well, let's see now, what is George basing his opinion on? Because without the evidence, it is an opinion. So one of the things that I think, that we can do to continue fighting for the truth is to take something like George's comments there and dig into it, find out what it was that made him come up with that, and how can it help us now to understand what's going on. Well, I'll just, continue my thoughts on this. Anybody wants to chime in, I'm happy to take up your topics. That's what we're here for on Friday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern time to get some feedback and see what you guys want to talk about. Um, so good morning. Hello, Polly in the Netherlands. So nice to have you with us in the evening over there. And Corky, good morning to you. Eek, eek, eek. Christy M is here. Good morning, and good morning to everyone who is watching or listening, or hello if you're watching the replay. I appreciate everybody that participates in our live chats. So there's some people on McDuff Lives 2 and some people on McDuff Lives 3. And I guess I had started doing both channels because I got a strike on McDuff Lives 3. And so I said, well, I'll risk opening up McDuff Lives 2 again, although we've got a lot of strikes over there. They're all they've all timed out at this point, so I can take a risk or two. So I opened up both channels. And the other thing is with Rumble, I've been promoting Rumble now for going on almost a year, and I keep expecting them to improve, and I am disappointed. They have not improved. I am still using it as my main base because I don't trust YouTube at all. Nobody should trust YouTube, by the way. See if the AI picks up on that and boots me for misinformation. No, you can't. You can't. You might think you're saying an opinion, but then they're going to say it's information. And then how do you fight that? Well, you can get your dictionary out and say, hey, no, that was an opinion. See, look, here is an opinion. And over here, this is how information is different from opinion. They know that. They're just using it to quash things they don't want people to know. And I've been quashed many, many, many times. And that's why I think maybe I'm doing something valuable here. We have about 1,000 videos in our archive now, and we're sharing them one at a time every day on our McDuff Archive channel on Rumble. So that's another reason to join Rumble, is to join both my McDuff Lives channel and my McDuff Archive channel, because the archive is where you'll get my older book readings getting republished. Right now we're republishing one of Jim Mars's books, and I have a half dozen of his books. Um, the great Jim Mars, Population Control. And you want to get your teeth into what the big companies and Henry Kissinger and the bad guys behind the scenes have been doing to our food policy. Well, it has a lot to do with the population control policy, eugenics. And so check out that if you're interested. And you can just listen to it. You don't have to watch it. You can just put your YouTube on your headphones while you're doing something else, and I think you'll find it worthwhile. A lot of people do absorb material that way, and we have started to do podcasts. We're broadcasting through Buzzsprout, and that distributes it to all of the Spotify's and Google and all the iHeart, all of the channels that people have signed up for. I am not myself a Spotify person yet. I just haven't had time to connect with that world. But I think it's a very powerful way to connect with people just by audio. And of course, Marcia, being a highly experienced editor for radio and television, she has been able to produce the audio portion, and put some nice musical tags, and get rid of the ums and the ahs to give a very easy and pleasant listening experience. So You can find all of those. I think there's about 12 of them up now at buzzsprout.com. I didn't see George up this morning. I wonder, and now I'm looking into the chat, and we have uh, Polly saying that the Duke report was taken down yesterday. So that's probably got to do with George. They don't like to have George's content reaching, uh, more than just a few, maybe a few thousand people. When he's always had the problem of when he gets up towards 100,000, and he's done it a number of times, that they just squash him. They just boot him back down, and that's that's one of the many things we have to put up with when we're trying to analyze the past and to shine a light on the events that have formed our present so that we can protect our future from the evils of the past. Excuse me a second. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed working with Marcia last night in terms of it is a challenge to reset everything so that two people can fit into the shot, in the video portion of it. And frankly, we worked on it for about 3 hours yesterday before the show, and I tried different combinations, and I actually think we solved it pretty well. Trying to put two people in a close shot with one camera in a way that we don't look, like we're looking away from each other or awkward or kind of squeezed in, leaning together. It takes a lot of time to just, move the camera forward and backward, turn it this way and that way. And while I felt a lot of pressure at the time, it's the kind of thing that I kind of enjoy, and I'm pleased with the way our studio looks, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback about it, the lighting and everything else. So I feel really good about the way we've been learning tech. I didn't know a darn thing about tech when I started this show, but that's going on 4 or 5 years ago now. Well, let's see what you guys are chatting about. Polly again, hello from the Netherlands. Corky with his traditional greeting of Eek, and Christy's here. Hello, Christy. Corky says many folks are at McDuff Lives 3 as well. Okay, so and both McDuff Lives 2 and 3 are showing up in my StreamYard feed. That's StreamYard is the vehicle that I use to distribute the video onto the different platforms like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and Rumble. And those are the ones that accept a live feed. Places like Odyssey and BitChute do not allow live feeds, or else I would be adding them as well. But I do have Odyssey and BitChute there as backups. And our good friend at Content Safe, Matthew Rayner, is making sure that I have a number of copies of every show in different platforms, and so we won't lose our content the way we lost the first 900 shows when YouTube took them all down and won't give them back. Yeah, that was before I knew I needed to make internal copies. I was just, you know, throwing myself into the fight as, trying to kind of an infantryman trying to get to the important part of today onto the video, and traveling around with George doing reporting from the courthouses and talking to witnesses, going to protests, going to the White House, things that move quickly. And I just never occurred to me that it would be wrong of me not to have my own internal recordings of everything. So I got Wise. I got copies of everything since about October of 2019. That's, I think that's when they hit me. Or maybe it was 2020, October 2020. That's right. It was after COVID, of course. And it was George's reporting on COVID that was what killed my channel as well. But again, we're back. We're here. We don't have 12,000 subscribers anymore like I did when they killed my channel, but we do have a number of subscribers on 5 or 6 different feeds right now. So I'm good. And but do help me build that Rumble channel, and we'll I'm going to be examining options constantly to try to find the best place where we can be comfortable and not worry about getting a YouTube strike. Well, good morning to everyone again. End of days prophet is here. Good morning. Mobster, the Mobsterful himself says, looks like Martin Armstrong reads and watches George Webb. I don't know who that is, so I guess maybe I'll Google him just to pursue that for a moment. Martin Armstrong. Yeah, we need people with a reach to do some interacting with George so that his opinions, his conclusions reach the minds of people that might not already be biased and prejudiced, but that have a good grasp of how to analyze things, what the subject matter is, perhaps some virologists or oncologists or biologists, and some are participating, but what we really need is a consensus to be put together to say, hey, you know what? George is absolutely right about this, or George is absolutely wrong about this, but at least advance the knowledge forward. That's what we're all trying to do. And so, who is Martin Armstrong? This is ArmstrongEconomics.com. Okay. And so, looks like he has a blog and it says covering the intersection of geopolitics, global markets, and economic confidence. Okay. And he does a lot of blogs. So, Martin Armstrong. That's good. Corky says certainty in an age of forced confusion. Essential. Yes, indeed. Okay, I remember now that I can post these comments. I've been doing my own producing for some time now, but it does require multitasking in the brain. Let's see. Anonymous says, we are vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. I really like that. I really do. I think that's all you hear. You hear it's like the Hegelian dialectic thing, right? The bad guys on the extreme this side and the bad guys on the extreme that side. And you're throwing crap back and forth. It's like a food fight from Animal Farm, from Animal House, only it's incendiary words that are meant at their source to divide and conquer. And that's a good way to put it. It's a filthy conversation of the wicked. And unfortunately, I guess maybe 90% of the people that are throwing that stuff back and forth are doing it not because they're intentionally trying to maintain the Hegelian dialectic. They don't understand it. They don't know about it. They haven't heard that this is the way that the deep money interests, the deep state, the financiers of empire make their money and steal it from the rest of us. It's through that Hegelian dialectic where you have, pro-life on this side and, pro-abortion rights on this side. I'll probably get in trouble for just characterizing those words. but that's, you know, divide and conquer. It used to be God, guns, and gays, and the guns issue has been used over and over and over again. And, so God, is God on the right wing or the left wing? I don't think so. I think that's kind of silly. And the gays thing is pretty much over. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to oppose some candidate just because they're gay. They might quietly not vote for them just because they have the old ideas, but those old ideas are being quashed quickly, and that's one thing that I think is good about how quickly our society is changing. Um, Getting rid of some prejudices that were impressed upon us by those financiers back, 200 years ago. The whole idea of white people being superior to black people, that was very convenient to the people that made money out of slavery. So of course they're going to foster that myth, and of course they're going to use it to control other people. And then, if you can get people in the pulpit to say it, if you can get a pope to support it, if you pull out the Bible and here's St. Paul, talking about his slaves and uh, Timothy. So that just becomes the entire conversation, and we don't realize that 99% of everything else we all agree on. But as long as that's what's in contention, and we have these elections that have been set up to make us think we're getting a free choice, and it's such an illusion now. It's just a joke, the idea that we've got a free choice. You know, I mean, suppose that you want to vote on the basis of U.S. Getting out of the Middle East. Just get out of the Middle East. We don't want to be in there at all. Or some people are now calling it Southwestern Asia. Well, however you call it, the area where these horrible conflicts have gone on, and they're nominally religious based. Um, Behind everything else, of course, is the imperial desire to control everything, and that continues to go on. We're having these horrible wars now. I just uh, learned that they're estimating 500,000 uh, Ukrainian soldiers have died in the war there, and we see what's going on in Israel in so many ways. If you watch Twitter or other places where the Palestinian side is publishing lots and lots of evidence of genocidal behavior on the part of the Israeli army. And then, of course, the other side, the Israeli side, they've got plenty of evidence that Hamas, is a terrorist organization, and they will show you videos equally horrible. So that back and forth, why don't we just get out? Let's find a candidate that will just say, a plague on both their houses. We're out of here. Let's go do something else in the world instead of trying to control what happens in a small little land called Israel or Palestine or Southwest Asia. But you can't do it. Look at all the candidates. They're all pro-Israel, except for Dr. Shiva, who is so extremely angry and uses such, vile language against the mainstream candidates that I find it very difficult to watch. But I require a civil debate, and Dr. Shiva does not keep it civil. He's talking like a very, very angry, um, I don't know, somebody that doesn't have his education. This guy has multiple degrees, MIT. He's a genius. I don't dispute anything about that. I think he's a genius about health, a genius about fair elections, a genius about the geopolitical manipulation that our uh, mainstream candidates are all part of. But he'll never succeed as a president as long as he treats everybody else with such contempt. Oh, that was me trying to do too many things at once, and I just popped away for a second. Sorry. Now, let's get back to the comments. Yeah, and there's Paulie saying the Duke report was taken down yesterday, and that's troubling. Well, I'll look into that after the show, but everybody else should too, and find out who took it down and make some noise about it. George's voice is being quashed, and there's no doubt about it. He says things that nobody else says. You might not like him. You might not like his style. You might think he's, Anyway, it's not about that. It's about he has the juice and he's got an amazing mind to put it together. So we need his voice, even if we don't always agree. Corky Goss, food, medicine, law, weaponized via trapped media. Exactly. That's it. GW George rode into the dusty internet in a pickup and a Trello board. I remember the Trello board. That was back 2017 when I first met George. Yeah, George had something like 62 videos up by the time I met him, and I was, watched every single one after that. So probably absorbed at least 1,000 of his. Sorry about that. I just touched a certain spot on my mouse, and for some reason it took me out of the screen. Don't know why. Anonymous, another comment. Terrorist leader Michael Savage. I remember Michael Savage. But it's been 6 or 8 years since I've even heard his name. Vimeo, that's an interesting question. I looked at Vimeo 3, 4 years ago, and they were censoring like crazy. Uh, and so I never even followed up on it. I thought, well, it's a nice platform. I think they wanted some money too, like $10 a month or something. So, you know, Rick Olson, good morning to you, sir. And hope we get together sometime. I think there's some mutual interest in music that we could explore to our mutual benefit. Anyway, welcome. Glad you're here. And Mobster is here. Let's see. His Twitter feed has the Israel Canal theory. I guess you're talking about the Savage, Michael Savage. Again, I haven't even heard his name in 8 or 9 years. But so the Israel Canal theory is basically, I think George has the best version of it. That is that the um, the canal the Suez Canal uh, doesn't benefit Israel in any way. It's not in Israel. It's not any place that Israel can control or benefit or profit from. So what they want to do is use the Gulf of Aqaba, which is the next kind of inlet into, off of the Persian Gulf there, to get into a port, the port of Aqaba. But to get from Aqaba up to Jerusalem, they've been hoping and planning to have a canal, because if they could put a canal in there, then they could bypass the Suez Canal and run the commerce through Israel. And so to put on top of that the theory that what's going on in Gaza is clearing operation so that they can put pipelines in and ports, and a port in the city of Gaza that would facilitate the offshoring of all of the oil that comes through the pipelines, and to enable Israel to be a central actor in the commerce in oil and gas. I think that's been a goal of a lot of financiers for a long time, Genie Energy, etc. I raised that issue with Harley Schlanger this week of the LaRouche organization, and he was not all that excited about looking into the financial interest behind things like this canal. He's back. He wants to take a step back, as always, to look. All of this is about the Mackinder world domination geopolitics, and that whoever controls the area there in Palestine, Israel, the Middle East, the Southwest Asia, if you like that better, whoever controls that is controlling the trade route that is the most important trade route in the world, and that is the one from Asia to Europe. And it's a land trade route. And so as we've gone over many times on the show, just to summarize it, as long as Britain can keep that land route, the Silk Road, the the project that China is fostering now, is that as long as they can frustrate that and make it not happen, then their control of the seas and maritime commerce is going to be the way that oil and gas move in these great big container ships and pipelines that the existing powers already control. That is the geopolitics of it. And to make those things happen, the financiers are working with the politicians to make a big profit, while the goal of the British, the City of London, is achieved. And that requires constantly taking down every effort to build a commercial link between Europe and Asia, whether it's in Ukraine or in Palestine or Israel. So British interests are the key concern that I think is very, very soundly argued by the folks at LaRouche and Schiller Institute. And I believe it too. I think that is right now where we need to look, is to just defang this crazy City of London that has all these tentacles everywhere, offshore banking being the big one, where they can run their drug money and their trafficking through banks in the Cayman Islands or some little city somewhere in, Liechtenstein or Monaco or Bhutan or somewhere, that nobody ever looks at, but they control the government and thereby control the banks, and the banks will, you know, and of course you have your Swiss banks for the really big thefts. Yeah, it's a terrible, stinking situation that the people of the world, if we ever could explain it to them, would rise up and say, "Screw this." We're going to have a jubilee. We're going to stop all of the debt collection. It's over. No more security interest based on uh, um, fractional reserve banking. And maybe even get rid of any type of usury, any type of interest. Go back to the idea of currency as just meaning a convenience of if I need to send some value from here across the country, I can do it with a piece of paper or electronically with a certain code that is efficient and it helps everybody, do business. But the financiers have figured out that if they could charge interest on that money, that it's like a a permanent cash cow for them. It just keeps on coming back to them, and if you lend out the same $100 10 times, you know, sooner or later you're going to get not only the $1,000 back, but interest on it. Multiplying your capital is the game, and they do it very, very well because of the use of interest on loans of money or currency. Ezra Pound is a good thinker on these things, so many others too. But as long as the political powers are in bed with the financiers, it ain't going to change. Rick Olson says God has two wings. Yeah, it's kind of like they talk about, the eagle has two wings, the left wing and the right wing. They got to work together or they can't fly. Hello, Rick Hop. You're all thinking about COVID, aren't you? Yeah, I got two YouTube channels at risk right now, so I don't want to get in trouble by saying some offhand opinion that they are then going to label as misinformation. John O'Loughlin gets another strike for misinformation just because he uttered a certain opinion. Disgusting the way they treat us. End of days, potty mouth Shiva. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, how can a man of such genius and such incredible ability to explain things, and I do think forget about the idea of whether he's really going to be the president or not, and watch his content because he's really, really good at explaining complicated things, systems, how they use systems to control us. It's not just, pointing a gun at somebody anymore. It's 5G, what do they call it? 5D warfare. And the system that they use to control us and all these pieces that they've fashioned to put together, you know, like a well built tank, as we were discussing as we read from the Paperclip Conspiracy by Tom Bowers, our new book. And I'll be back with the next chapter of that on Monday morning at 11 a.m. here on McDuff Lives. My friend is creating a national gay museum in Palm Springs. That's interesting. Choices are a primordial force. Intentionality and karma require great care. Well, Sounds sounds good to me, Corky. I'm not somebody that really studies things like karma and primordial force, but I'm glad you do. It's always fun to and educational to talk to you, Corky. And the Duke Report will be on Rumble. That's a good. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's another good reason to have Rumble because if they took me down here, I'll still be there on Rumble. Okay, and Polly says they were also on Twitter. That's true. I mean, it's just that YouTube has the big reach, and that's the one that really we try to stay on YouTube because YouTube reaches 100 times more people than any of the other ones. I'm just picking a number out of the sky. It could be 1,000 times. Brightmore Dinosaur, hello. And Brightmore says Suez Canal is a good place to block and cause supply shortages. Yeah, well, that's another thing we saw when that ship accidentally on purpose got stuck in the canal. And they made a point with that, didn't they? They said, look, if you don't deal with us, we can jam up your canal. Well, it is. And perhaps if you are thinking in terms of protecting your supply, you might want to support the Gulf of Aqaba, the Ben Gurion Canal, or the Red Dead Canal, the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. Hello, Taz. Taz says the Hamas tunnels are deep and dangerous, quote unquote. Sounds like the excavation for the canal or other construction is well underway. That's a good point. Maybe those digging all these tunnels is going to contribute to what ultimately will be the canal. Uh, and they're going to need a canal. They're going to need two canals. They're going to need one from Aqaba up to the Dead Sea, and then they're going to need one across. And they're going to have to figure out a way to, to put water back into the Dead Sea, which they will if they use enough uh, peaceful nuclear explosions to get all of that rock out of the way in the Negev desert and the mountains there. They're going to have to do a lot of blasting to build that canal, and that's why it hadn't happened yet. And Corky, let me get your comment up there. Sometimes it's hard to get a comment to show. Not sure why. There we go. Corky Goss, for me, cold fusion remains the elephant in the room. It influences without anyone knowing the tech battles being waged. Now we have the thunderstorm generator by Malcolm Bendall. Okay, people might want to look into that. I've had shows with Corky and with Bob Grenier, who is a specialist in cold fusion and can explain it to you. If you look in my archives, you'll find my show with Bob, in which I got a very good, clear introduction of what Corky is talking about, and to have free energy. You know, they don't want that at all, man. Can you imagine what the ends they'll go to quash anybody that comes up with a free energy idea? And that's what we're dealing with in cold fusion. Okay, and we have a correction to an earlier post. God, end of days prophet says, well, God has six wings according to the book of Ezekiel. Okay, well, maybe you just couldn't see them all at once, and you had to be a prophet to actually see all six wings. Oh, and Corky says angels have three forms. Well, that gets even more complicated. Hey, Bright Morris says, here's what Gore Vidal says. There is only one party in the United States, the Property Party, and it has two right wings, Republican and Democrat. Ah, very well. Very well said there, Gore. Gore Vidal. You know, his books are, I don't read his books because although I'm sure there's a lot of wisdom and good writing in them, uh, he does kind of do put his little twist into historical studies so that they're not really nonfiction. And that's just not something I look for. I want to have everything as straightforward and simple as I can make it. I don't want to try to read the tea leaves. But maybe I'm being unfair. I need to go back and study Gore Vidal before I talk about him. All right, let's scroll down some more. Here's Christy Liebel with some information about the British gas or exploration rights to Gaza marine gas field expire in 2024. Oh, after this, Gaza could grant those rights to Russia. Ah, this is something very concerning to Washington. I never thought of that. That's brilliant. I mean, I guess, you're saying that this is something that other people are talking about behind the scenes. I would have never learned that if we didn't have this chat this morning. So very interesting. The British gas exploration rights to Gaza marine gas field. Well, where did they get the rights from? Who sold them the rights? This is an interesting line. I'd like to know more about. And here's Pat Andler commenting on Dr. Shiva. The guy's a genius and can help us get over the potty mouth. He is protesting Zionism at Harvard tomorrow at 11. Yes, and if I were nearby, I would go. My dad's alma mater, Harvard, uh, bad institution, bad for democracy, bad for liberty, bad for honesty and truth in government and elsewhere. It is a controlled institution that produces people that follow the narrative and do what they're told. Uh, you know, Shame on Harvard. And Don Matzia agrees with Pat, as do I, of course. And another comment from Pat. VVAC is there to distract from Shiva, who they are hiding. People think when you mention Dr. Shiva that you are talking about VVAC, some same old thing the elites always do to trick us. Isn't it true? Yeah, that's why I call my show with Harley. I call it Harley and Me because it resonates of the very, very famous, highly promoted book 20 years ago called Marley and Me. And Marley and Me is not about Bob Marley, it's about a dog. And the famous story of this dog, who happened to be named Marley, becomes the number one hit on Google if you decide to Google the name Marley. I mean, I haven't done it lately, but let's run the experiment just for the fun of it. Here's Google. And we put in Marley. Okay, number one, Bob Marley. Number two, Wikipedia Bob Marley. Number three, Marley Engineered Products. Number four, House of Marley Bluetooth speakers and earbuds. And it looks like the book Marley and Me has faded off the front page. But we've got all the other Marleys now. We've got Rita, Rohan, Damien, Sarita, Sella, Sedella Marley, all of these descendants and relatives that have their own artistic channels and videos and things, I suppose. So in this case, what I perceived as one of those cover-up things, has kind of run its course and it's over with. But the principle, I think, is very, very. Here's another one that just occurred to me. As George Webb pointed out, there was a really important whistleblower, um, a reporter for, I think, the New York Times, and his name was Joe uh, Rago, Rago. And he died in a very suspicious manner in his early 30s after doing some reporting that was objected to and probably very, very much not appreciated by the powers that be. And his sudden death by something that had to do with his lungs is uh, an interesting and sad thing. But it's been since then that this guy Joe Rogan has come on my radar screen, and everybody talks about Joe Rogan. Is it possible that Joe Rogan existed before this? Of course, he's been an actor and he was associated with the Disney group for a long time. So he's a pro. He's in the game. But did he get promoted to the status he has now simply in order so that people would forget about Joe Rago and only go to Joe Rogan? I think that stuff goes on all the time. Look at Fabian. I did a whole show on this about how uh, they don't want us to look into the Fabians, so they created this musical artist um, by getting this kid named Fabiano, making him a lip sync artist because he never did sing. They had a pro vocalist to do his recordings, but he became a very, very big star, named Fabian. Why? Well, because when you look up Fabian on a thing, you're not going to get to George Bernard Shaw and his theories about, the superior races. All right. Very stimulating comment there. Thank you for that one. Brightmore, GM is investing in Niron Magnetics, a magnetic approach to powering certain devices. Yeah, that makes sense. God's mysterious power onto the angels. Laura Willingham is here, a little bit late. Thank you for joining us, Laura. Always glad to have you. And here is a longtime follower and subscriber, Wen Tai from Taiwan. Welcome once again to you, my friend, and thanks for joining us. I guess it's about 12 hours difference over there, and that makes it near midnight. So thanks for joining us. I'm always glad to see you when I see your name pop up. End of Day says Bob Marley's music is forever banned from Jamaica. That can't be true. I mean, when I was in Jamaica, I was listening to Bob Marley, but that was 10 years ago. See, uh, that's a hard one to swallow. I'd be so sad to know that that's true. But that's another example of, quashing the voices that say, one love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. Addie is here. Hello, Addie. Good to see you. Signal jamming. Yeah, okay, that's the word. That's the term for what I'm trying to describe. Thank you. And Don Matsia says you got to choose your battles, and that's true. I've got both hands full of battles going on right now on many levels, personal as well as trying to do what I can to, you know, expose and get rid of the horror show that's really driving events in this world today. So thank you everybody for being with me this morning and all week. Thank you for your thoughts and your prayers if you offer them. And we're doing well here at McDuff Lives. We're doing what we're told. We're staying away from the fried chicken and and enjoying our nutritious food and very, very interesting uh, conversation with Marcia last night. I hope you enjoyed it. I know a lot of people have different approaches to it, but I really truly believe in Marcia's deep study, and the references she gives are worthwhile from Dr. Barnard on to the other ones. And I'm going to read this China study myself that she keeps referencing. So more will be revealed. Thank you all so much. And I will see you Monday morning, 11 a.m., with another edition of our new book reading from the Paperclip Conspiracy by Tom Bowers.